name is Michelle Murdoch, and I wrote the book, A Journey of Courage, the amazing story of Sister Dorothy Stang. The book was published in 2009, happily, by me and the Sisters of Notre de Namur. I remember it well. A snowy Saturday morning, I was reading the paper and I found this clipping which said that a nun had been murdered in the Amazon. And I looked at it and I thought, who would do that? Being a somewhat naive person of the geopolitical situation then. So I read on, and lo and behold, she was a sister of Notre de Namur who had taught at this college, Trinity, but she had not taught there. I had gone there and had many of her friends who were my professors. And so I went in April of that year to find out more about Dorothy.
How was the Brazil experience for you?
Well, I had photocopied many of her letters. I was able to get all her letters from Brazil and some from Arizona as well. I was writing and I suddenly felt the roadblock. I really felt I had to go to Brazil. And I really felt the need to be around Dorothy's people and to see what it looked like. We did not go to the Amazon, but I spoke with one of the other sisters because I went on a little river trip out of Belém. But I also felt really good about living 9 days with the sisters in the house in which Dorothy had come. When she would come into the city of Belém, she would stay there. And I stayed in the room where she had been, and roomed with another sister who had come in for the trial, who was also a good Brazilian Portuguese speaker. And I, at that point, realized what this was all about. Many of these young women that were in formation, a couple of whom I'm still in touch with, I had such a sense of what their lives were like in the trial, of course, and stayed nearby, I think. But I had met her once in New York when she was at the United Nations for a conference. And she explained some of what was going on and why the trial would go on and how they would conduct themselves. And I was going to be there, and I may not understand it all, but people were very kind. That was really an eye-opener to a woman who thought she knew a lot about life. And here was really laid out for me the structure of the mission work and how they worked, but also the conflict that they had to work against. The good works that many of them were doing. Sister Jo Depuy was working with the Madre people, and Rebecca, of course, working with indigenous people. So the Gospels were definitely being lived. That's what I could see.
Tell us now, why is Dorothy's legacy still alive in our world today?
Dorothy was such a model of a good Christian. That's the first thing. That collected her people by talking the gospel with them. And she never looked down on them. She, in fact, was the godmother for I don't know how many families, children that were born at the time there. Kindness, her energy, her spirit was terrific. But I think in terms of legacy, what she did in terms of celebrating the forest and working with them to understand that you can cut down a few trees to make a place for your house and for your family and for a cow if you're lucky enough to have one. We don't cut down the full forest because we're going to need the forest as we go forward in life. And all the animals and the other biological species are needed by the rest of the world. So that was really her message. And I feel, this is my spirituality, but I feel that after she died, her work kept going on. And when we see that Pope Francis came up with Laudato Si, which had to have been inspired in large part by the work that she did. And given that he was also South American and knew of her, I think that must have had some impact there. I think her work with the climate change and all of that is just lingering. But I think the other thing that I really feel strongly about is her ability to stand up to corruption. And she worked with the peasants to understand that and to try to stand up for them whenever had the opportunity. She would go into Belém and get the deeds for the pieces of land that they were rightly occupying. The government had given land to the settlers in the Amazon, and A lot of them were pushed off and worse.
Hope do you carry to the future?
Now, as we know, in this country, it's difficult, but I think we cannot lose hope. My hope is that everyone who feels that there's some wrong going on can stand up, can get involved in. I think that people should, whatever they can do, emulate what Dorothy did, essentially to stand up for the people who are being harmed by in their town, in their lives, in government. Thank you.